And the Salt Lake Tribune says protesters called for the firing of a detective who tried to arrest a nurse in the middle of an emergency room. Dramatic video shows the detective dragging Alex Wubbles away after she refused to let officers take blood from an unconscious patient. 2 officers are now on paid administrative leave. Tony DeCoppola is here with why the nurse says she was just trying to do her job. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. The Salt Lake City Police Department is facing criticism for its conduct in the video, which was released by Alex Wubbles' attorneys. The footage has resulted in a public apology from the Salt Lake City Police Chief and a criminal investigation by the DA's office. A body camera captured the moment nurse Alex Wubbles was arrested in the burn unit at the University of Utah Hospital. She was handcuffed after she refused to let police draw blood from an unconscious man in the emergency room.
I'm just a nurse trying to protect the patient.
Believe it or not, I'm trying to protect him too.
It's so blatantly obvious what was right and what was wrong, and I was not wrong.
The victim, an Idaho Reserve police officer who works as a truck driver, had been brought in after being in this fiery car crash on July 26 near Salt Lake City. Officer Jeff Payne's written report said he wanted to take a blood sample to show the victim did nothing wrong.
Is this patient under arrest?
Nope.
Wubbles explained to Payne that it was against hospital policy and the law to take blood as evidence from an unconscious patient without a warrant or an arrest. She puts her supervisor on speakerphone. That's when things escalated.
No, we're done. We're done. You're under arrest.
Wubbles was detained for about 20 minutes before being released. Salt Lake City Police Chief Mike Brown.
I was alarmed by what I saw in the video.
The department is conducting an internal investigation and has changed its blood draw policy.
I want to just continue the conversation. We need re-education, and I will be waiting to hear what Chief Brown decides should be done with his employees.
Over the weekend, around 100 people gathered outside police headquarters to voice their outrage. Wubbles says if she had to, she would take the same action again.
My coworkers would have done the exact same thing. This is what we do. This is our profession.
Alex Wubbles hasn't taken any legal action, but she says that's not off the table. The police department where the patient worked issued a statement thanking the nurse and the hospital staff, saying protecting the rights of others is truly a heroic act.
It's a great story for Americans to know that somebody would protect what's really important, your blood, from somebody who doesn't have a warrant.
A great ending to a very unfortunate beginning.
Yeah, I think we're all shaking our heads looking at that video over and over again. How can that happen?
Absolutely. Tony, thank you very much.
Good cop exposes how nurse arrest was inevitable, SLC police forced to make 5 arrests a day. A former SLC cop just blew the lid off the nurse assault by exposing how their officers are forced to make 5 arrests a day. By Matt Agorist, September 6, 2017. Salt Lake City, Utah. Last week, the world was exposed to the face of tyranny as they watched the body camera video of Detective Jeff Payne arresting nurse Alex Wubbles for refusing to violate the law and warrantlessly draw blood from an unconscious crash victim. Police apologists were speechless and were unable to justify this cop's abusive behavior caught on video. Now, as news of the arrest continues to spread, even police are coming forward to expose what one whistleblower is referring to as ongoing failure at the highest levels of police. When good cops sit back and do nothing as bad cops lay waste to the rights of innocent citizens, those good cops become bad ones. Those who remain silent in the face of tyranny are complicit in its growth. Eric Moutzos, a former Salt Lake City police officer, is now crossing the thin blue line and refusing to remain silent in the face of said tyranny. In an epic rant on Facebook, Moutzos lays bare the corruption and problems boiling up through departments across the country. Advertisement. Since the nurse Wubbles incident/arrest in SLC, I feel it's time to tell my stories. The real stories. This post is just one of them. First, I love the American police officer. I was once one. In my opinion, the things they go through every day are unparalleled to any profession in our country with the exception of the military. I know what their families go through daily, wives and kids especially. We need cops. We need good cops. More importantly, we need law and order in America. With that said, I believe we need to have a real conversation about a giant elephant in the national room regarding law enforcement and how some of these departments operate deep down, more importantly, from the top down. I believe it's some administrations that put officers more in harm's way than even a bad guy could. Mautsos was publicly chastised for refusing to perform in a gay pride parade in 2014, which eventually cost him his badge and gun. To be clear, Mautsos did not refuse to act as protection for the parade, he only objected to performing acrobatics on his motorcycle as part of the parade, citing religious reasons. Read more. Texas legislation would allow teachers to kill students. However, as Mautsos points out, his choice to exercise his religious freedom was an easy way for the department to get rid of him for actually being a good cop and exposing the corruption within. Mautsos writes, "What the public doesn't know, is that I was passed up for 2 positions before ultimately joining the motorcycle squad in 2013. Why? I was ordered to arrest 5 people, misdemeanor arrests, per day, as part of a quota. Not just traffic tickets, but misdemeanor arrests. I told my sergeant, no. That night, after only getting 3 arrests, I was ordered to stay after shift another hour, without pay, and was screamed at in front of my squad and ordered to arrest 2 more people that night, while the rest of the squad went home. I still would not do it. That was the beginning of the end." What Mautsos is referring to here takes place in departments across the country. TFTP has exposed multiple quota systems just like this, in which cops are not only told to write tickets but also make arrests. As TFTP points out, good cops who expose these quota systems or refuse to participate are often fired, threatened, or worse. This is what happened to Mautsos. My name started to get tarnished in the PD among the upper brass. This was an order I actually refused. Not a parade. This is where it started for me and my family. It was unconstitutional, which I specifically told my sergeant, and this was later conveyed to the administration. The current administration knows of this story, and many other scandals I am prepared to tell in the next several weeks, and has done nothing about them. This seems to be their MO, cover-up after cover-up. Only until it hits the press. As TFTP pointed out, what Mautsos is referring to actually happened in the case of Nurse Wubbles. Despite the rights violations and the clear signs that the forced blood draw was an attempt to cover up police incompetence, the department never acted until after the video went viral. Today, the department is embroiled in yet another scandal, and I'm tired of it. This one involving an arrest at the University of Utah hospital, which they knew about for weeks before and did nothing. Today they said there's no acceptable reason why people weren't placed on admin leave. I'll tell you the reason: they didn't want to take acceptable responsibility and do the right thing. Mautsos goes on to say how he thinks racism in policing is not as big of a problem as forcing cops to make mandatory stops. I never met a racist cop in my 7 years on the PD. I don't believe it's racism that runs rampant in police agencies, however quotaism does. Mandatory stops. Why? All for statistics that lead to federal and local funding/revenue for some police agencies. Even if an individual police officer isn't racist, the system they support certainly is. As TFTP has noted, these mandatory stops for drugs, seat belts, window tint, license plate lights, and other victimless crimes hit black communities the hardest. Mautsos wants to change this, and he intends to do so by exposing it. He's also ready to face the backlash he is going to receive by doing so. My ultimate goal is for leaders at the state, national and local levels to address policing at its roots, to include the eradication of administrative practices, driving stats and quotas, that work against the citizens we are sworn to protect by eliciting behavior in officers like what we saw at the hospital last week. The pressures on these officers are real. I felt them daily. They are born of a lack of effective leadership. I do not excuse what the officer in the video did, he is accountable for his own actions. But I am very suspicious of the environment created around him by those who supervise him, all the way up the chain of command. These are institutional problems and they need to be exposed, for the good of the officers and the good of the community they serve. I realize this will bring scrutiny from many, and on all sides. But I feel strongly it needs to come to light. To show what a stand-up former cop he was, Moutsos issued an apology to Nurse Wubbles and noted how unlike the other two cops who watched and did nothing as Payne attacked an innocent nurse he would not have stood by. I also apologize to Nurse Wubbles. If someone knows her who reads this, please tell her that. I would have not let that happen if I were on scene. I can promise you that. This is how change is fostered. Only when good people refuse to enforce bad policy will anything change. Thank you Eric Moutsos for refusing to be a part of that bad policy.
Last June, he made headlines.
Accusations of bigotry after a Salt Lake City police officer refuses to patrol gay pride events this weekend.
But Eric Moutsos says that's not the way it happened.
It wasn't about protection or security.
A motorcycle officer, Moutsos says his assignment was to perform choreographed maneuvers at the start of the parade.
How I felt was that you are going to be a participant and look like you advocate this particular cause, and I don't.
Moutsos says he asked to trade assignments.
Trades happen almost every event. It's in our policy to trade.
He says his request was denied.
In discussion with them, I said, I'll still do this. I will still be there to do it. 2 days later, I was brought into one of the commander's offices. They took my badge and my gun for discrimination. 2 days after that, it was blasted all over the news. Officer refuses assignment.
Salt Lake City Police Chief Chris Burbank says he hasn't seen the letter or talked to Moutsos about what happened, but he says firmly,
I will not tolerate bias, bigotry, or hatred in the organization.
Burbank says when the issue came up, he did what he always does.
Anytime that conduct comes into play in the police department in which I question somebody's ability to be out in the public, I place them on administrative leave. It's no different than an officer-involved shooting.
Rather than wait for an internal investigation and potentially return to work in a place he now felt uncomfortable, Moutsos says he decided to resign.
I was completely terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I was going to continue to try to be in law enforcement. I didn't think that anybody would even touch me.
Public criticism was certainly loud.
Clearly, the officer chose to act in a very bigoted way.
That's absolutely not true. I have protected free speech events several times that I disagree with, but I'll protect them. I believe in the First Amendment so much, even though I may disagree with a particular message, I will still be there to protect it, because without them saying what they want to say, I wouldn't be able to say what I want to say.
Moutsos has stayed silent for 7 months.
I wanted to just hide. You know, I just wanted this to just get behind me, but I think about it every single day. You know, I haven't been able to sleep a full night's sleep.
And he says with potential legislation at the state capitol to provide protection for all people and all beliefs, he felt now was the time to speak out.
I feel very strongly that my message can do good.
That message, we all need to be more accepting of other people's views.
We need to come together and explain, hey, look, we may not agree, but we can still love each other. I love people. I'll protect you. I'll take a bullet for you, but I do not advocate certain things in people's lives. Just like 99.9% of the world, you know, doesn't agree with my faith, and that's okay.
When Moutsos resigned, the department's internal investigation ended there. But could things have turned out differently if he had asked to trade without revealing it was because of his personal beliefs?
What are you really thinking if you're going to put forth that view to other people in the police department? Are you really fit to be a police officer? That calls into question someone's judgment, if you ask me.
Moutsos is back on the beat in another department, but Burbank says in his department,
you have to be able to do your job and set your personal feelings aside.
I don't think there's a possible way that I could be a police officer and check that at home. because I desperately need my faith in this, especially in this line of work.
Ashley Kewish, KSL 5 News.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I'd like to thank you for all your years of support through the years. As a result, this channel has grown and allowed me an equity partnership in carmarshal.com. Please take the time to check them out. They help you buy and sell your next car, even have a negotiating tool to save you from the hassle of haggling with multiple dealers. The link is in the description below. Please click and help support and give if you can too through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks again.